Well, for the next 2.5 to 3.5 hours, I'll be talking about the duties and responsibilities of citizenship. You should have a skeleton PowerPoint as well, so you can just kind of follow along, fill it out, and listen to any information I may have as pertaining to the assignment itself or the upcoming test. So, as far as legal duties are concerned, as far as the law is concerned, um, there are a few items that you have to follow as a citizen. But you have to keep in mind, as this is stating, that you belong to a community. Now, regionally or locally or nationally or internationally, you can be scripted into a specific community, but you guys, for the most part, live in the town or village of Ellsworth in Wisconsin, which is the Midwest, which is the heartland of the United States and Western culture internationally. All right, so you check a lot of blocks as far as who you are or where you are from. But as a member of a community, as an American citizen, it comes with certain legalities, certain requirements and responsibilities. So that's kind of what this is about. All right, duties are things that you're required to do. So at each level, again, local level is Ellsworth, state level, Wisconsin, national level, United States. Some of these duties um, can be punishable if not accomplished. All right, so everybody's duty is to obey the law. Now, regardless of where you stand politically, law is there in order to guide citizens into proper paths so that we don't have chaos or anarchy. So the unwritten rule is that everybody follows the rules, and those that can't follow the rule, we have places for them, institutions for them to try to um, get them back into the citizen role properly. All right. So that is a duty, your duty as a citizen, to obey the law, to follow the law. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to agree with every law, and that's acceptable in this country. You have the right to protest in this country. So if there are things that you disagree with, as far as the government is concerned, you have that right, that duty to speak your mind and to let the government know. Remember, the government is, we run the government. It's not the other way around. And a lot of times, I think government officials and citizens forget that. Number two is to pay taxes. So that tax money that all citizens are supposed to be paying into is used to help maintain. Right? It helps maintain roads. It helps build these schools. It helps pay for military. It pays for all kinds of social projects. That money is supposed to be used for the benefit of all citizens. Now, it can be argued that they need to spend taxes on other items, maybe not so much in the military, maybe more in the local communities. That is all subject to argument, and you should think about those things and speak up about those things. But the bottom line is everyone should be paying their fair share of taxes. And in the process, that helps everybody else in the long run. So for boys or males, it is a duty or a legal obligation when you turn 18 to register for the draft. It's called the Selective Service Act. You can go to the post office, you can go online nowadays, you can go to the counseling office, and you can register. All that means is your name is on a list. And if the government ever determines that we're short of soldiers, sailor, airmen, and Marines, that they can implement the Selective Service Act, which is the draft where they randomly select usually Social Security numbers and put you into the military. Now, that hasn't happened since the Vietnam War. We've been at war, a perpetual state of war, since about 2002, 2001. So we're at a state right now where our military is tired, has been deployed to all around the world. And yet our government hasn't really said anything about draft or selective service. So if there were a major conflict in the future, then I assume they would come up with that idea or they would implement that idea. But right now it doesn't seem like we're really heading in that direction. We're trying to withdraw from some of the countries that we're involved in. And then another duty is to serve in court. So as a juror, and so I've lived here 20 some years, and I've only been notified twice of the possibility of serving as a jury member. So the local courthouse would send you a letter making you aware of the possibility of becoming a jury member. And then you have to return that letter. And then if the trial actually goes through, most cases settle out of court and they never get to a jury. But if that particular case ends up going to court, then you may be called in. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to sit on the court or on the jury. It means you're part of the process and you have the potential of being selected. So you should ask your parents if they've ever been selected to be a jury member. Now, I should probably say one other thing. You are paid. You're not paid a lot to be on a jury. So most people are not going to make money being on a jury, but you're given food and most cases are going to be just a few days. It is possible they can go longer depending on the profile of the case, but you are somewhat compensated financially. All right, and then attending school. So each state kind of has the requirements as far as what it looks like for you to attend school, but you are by law required to attend school. Usually up to the age of 16. It becomes very difficult to be removed from school. It's possible at 16 or 17. 18, then you have some other choices, but 16 or 17, it really is a process, and there has to be a lot of work put into if you are going to try to get out of school. But for the most part, most people are unable to do that. Responsibilities now. So we talked about duties, and now these are just responsibilities. This is not law abiding or punishable by law. It's just things that generally are part of your responsibility of being a citizen. And number one on that list is pay attention to your government. So we're at a period in our history right now where our government, our citizenship is split in half. Almost literally. One half of our society believes we should be going one direction. The other half believes we should be going in another direction. Now, it's great that so many people are paying attention to the government because they should be. But the other part of that issue is compromise. And right now, in a democracy, compromise is normally the rule of order. And right now, we're not in that rule of order. So our government is struggling. But as you guys have, and many of you are very aware, and I really do think that's a great thing that you guys are paying attention to. most of you, if not all of you, were paying attention to the election, the presidential election. I think that's fantastic. And I don't care which side of the political spectrum you are, at least you're paying attention. And that is, a civic responsibility. So thank you for that. All right. Also, you need to be aware of your rights. And we will touch briefly on the Bill of Rights in the next week or so. And it'll make you at least aware of some of your basic rights. All right. I've already mentioned about protesting, or if you do not agree with the government in certain aspects, it is your civic responsibility to speak up and try to assemble with other people, like-minded citizens that agree with your sentiment against whatever the government is doing. You have every right to speak up. All right. Right now, there's a good segment of the population that is speaking up against the results of the election. Now, whether you feel it's accurate or not, the assumption or the accusation that there was fraud doesn't matter. As long as a segment of the population believes that there was fraud, well, then it's their right to say and speak up about it. So, and then it's the job of the government to disprove, or the courts to disprove the theory or the sentiment, or to do something about it. So that's really where we are right now as far as the results of the election. The vast majority of the court systems have ruled there has not been any fraud. All of the 6 battleground states have certified their election results. Now, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been some aspects of fraud taking place, and that is why many of these cases are going to the courts, and the courts are trying to figure that out. Now, is there enough to overturn an election? Not now, I don't think so, but that doesn't mean in the future there couldn't be. All right, another thing that you should think about is holding your elected representatives accountable. They all have websites, and as you get to voting age, you're voting for them. And then it is your duty, really, or responsibility. I'm sorry, duty is a little bit more legal. Your responsibility to let them know what you're thinking. And I think they appreciate that sometimes. And they should reply, regardless of how minimal you think the issue is. They should have some type of reply for you if you have questions. And then vote. One of the best ways to voice your opinion is voting. All right. And again, you've lived through a very contentious election, one of the most contentious elections we've had in a long time. And you have seen how important it is for people to get out and vote. Now, that's at the national level. It's as important to get out and vote at the local level. So, village, county, town, there's voting. There are boards, committees on these local levels that determine what's going on in your community. So, we've talked about it. If we want to get rid of this old high school right up the road here, we should be holding our local governments responsible for that and saying, hey, what are you going to do about this huge building that we could tear down and make some kind of a park or something constructive out of it? They need younger voices to hear those things. So you need to get involved locally. All right, the other thing that has been a big issue in the last few years is respecting others' rights. Public property, private property, vandalizing. So if we combine the protests of the killing of George Floyd, they have every right to protest the killing of George Floyd because it was done at the hands of a police officer who was a government official. and it was videotaped for all to see. So, it's not a surprise that there was massive protests. Matter of fact, around the world about that case. The looting and the rioting that also took place around that time, that's a whole different ball game. That's a whole different um, issue, right? That is criminal activity. Right? The protest, not criminal activity. Vandalizing and looting, criminal activity. So that's where the line is drawn. So what happens a lot of times in controversial protests is those that don't agree with the cause will show up and try to disrupt things by doing vandalizing and trying to incite violence because the police have to get involved in that kind of a situation. All right. Peaceful protesting is just that, peaceful protesting, and by all means, our society should be allowed to do so. All right, respecting diversity and tolerance is just so important in our culture. We are one of the few cultures in the world that is so diverse, probably the only culture in the world that is as diverse as we are, as accepting of all faiths and walks of life. And that comes with a cost, and that cost is intolerance. There are many individuals in our society that are intolerant of other beliefs or practices or differences. But that is not the American way. The American way is we welcome all. We are a nation of immigrants. And in the process, we try to incorporate all walks of life. Now, you don't have to agree with the government and its practices, but you also have to consider that at some point in your family's history, unless you are a Native American, you have had to overcome similar obstacles that people coming to this country have to overcome. And if you think of it that way, you have to start realizing that it is part of the process, that diversity is a positive thing within our culture, within our country, that diversity is necessary to get different points of view, right? It's not a black white issue. It should be a uniform issue of all. And that is one of your responsibilities because we are so unique in that aspect. Now, I've spent a lot of time in other areas of the world, and I have seen intolerance at the highest levels. And then when I come home and I see intolerance, it's disturbing to me because we are trying to represent to the world diversity and that it can be successful and has been successful throughout our history. And yet, there are times throughout our history where we have struggled with intolerance. All right, contributing to the common good. So this is your active participation in the community. You have uh, a requirement in this school district of certain service hours. Well, that is just trying to introduce you to the world of civic responsibility. So many of you will, because of the fact that you have to do these things, many of you will actually continue to do those things for the rest of your life just because you're being introduced to some of these volunteer activities and it's for the betterment of others. And when you participate in these things and you see the good that you can do, um, it becomes a lifelong, hopefully, a lifelong practice. So I know at your age, it's not always what you're thinking of, for many of you, but I believe in my heart of hearts that over time, it's a good thing for you just to see how you can affect change and do good things for others. All right. So, volunteer work within your local community or outside of your community is always a good thing. Many of you, I assume, have been part of missions through your church. That's another form of reaching out to others. All right. Um, because it's required within the school, you see a lot more students involved in bigger organizations outside of the schools, Red Cross, organizations like that, the United Way, that do things globally, and you can be a part of those type of organizations at a very young age. All right. So that is it for this slide deck. Now, you guys had a skeleton deck, so you just had to fill in some terms. Hopefully, you listened to the lecture as well and take some notes off of it. You also will see, are you going to have a summative assessment this week? And this will be part of that. So have this available for Thursday. All right. Thanks for hanging in there. I kept it. I didn't quite go 3 hours. So I apologize. Next time I'll try to go longer. Have a good day.